You're watching Capitol Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. Joining us now is Representative Rita Mayfield. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I wanted to have you on because you have a bill that has been filed very late in the session here that really wants to beef up security around the Capitol. This session alone, just in the past couple of months, we've seen an evacuation, we've seen lockdowns, 3 separate instances of this, and it's led for you and even some Republican representatives to join you on this bill to say it's time that we strengthen security and make sure that everybody in this building and on the grounds are safe. How do you want to go about this in this bill?
Well, this is a very bipartisan issue. When we had the active shooter alert, that's when the sirens were going off and everything, it took, I want to say it took about 45 minutes before we were even alerted as, representatives and individuals in the building that there was an active shooter warning call that had come into the Capitol. My understanding is that the protocols really were not there in place. They had to call Chicago and then get the approval to even put the sirens on. People were wandering around the building during an active shooter alert, which is a problem in and of itself. And then since then, we've had two bomb threats since then. But that alert, that was basically the call around the world, as they say, the shout that went around the world, because so many people were they were frightened. They were like, oh my God, is this going to be a repeat of a storming of the Capitol? Are we safe? I have a very young staffer who was terrified and didn't know what to do. There were no procedures in place for staff. What do you do when these alarms go off? Everybody was like, stay in place, secure the area. But a lot of people did not stay in place to secure the area. Our underground tunnels, which connect all 3 buildings, individuals were walking all through the basement. So where was the security at? Where was the safety measures that were put in place to address this? Because when you say shelter in place, that's exactly what it means. It doesn't mean go visit your friend, or walk through the tunnels or just wander around. And a lot of individuals didn't have places to shelter in place. There was no designated place. What do you do, like on a day like today, when you've got a couple hundred kids in the building? Where do they go? What is the procedure? These are things that really need to be outlined and tightened up. The safety of not just the representatives, but it's for our general public, our officers who are our front line. Where is the safety measures that are in place for them? So this is what this bill does. We're looking at how do we make this facility as safe as possible. Will it maybe inconvenience 1 or 2 people because they may have to do a safety scan, that they may actually, rather than walking past security, flipping a badge, maybe they may have to scan it. We want everybody that comes into this building, this is the people's capital, and we want you to be safe while you're here.
So I wonder, when you mentioned that this whole active shooter warning, everything like that was sort of the realization that maybe these systems weren't really built out. Is that something you've been in this building for a while now? Was that something you knew about? Was that something you had realized, or was that a realization for you itself when you saw that these systems weren't exactly laid out?
It was definitely a realization. It was the very first time that we had actually had that type of a situation when I was here. So it was just, looking at people running through the hallways, banging on doors, let me in, and it was just total chaos. Nobody knew what to do, where to go, what the process was. The fact that a lot of individuals had to go to the local news sources to find out what was actually happening in the Capitol. We get alerts from the state police when there's traffic jams or if there's a major crash on the highways, but yet none of us received the alert that there was a possible threat here within the building. That in itself is an issue.
So what is your bill would create that chain of command, create that system, or requires the Secretary of State Police to do it? How does it go about solving these problems?
Well, the bill gives the Secretary of State's office a lot of authority and rulemaking ability to put security measures in place to I won't say guarantee, but to make sure that individuals that come into the building feel safe. So we're looking for hardened structures for our police, our front line of defense. Right now, you basically just have a table. That is not enough security for them. As we saw in 2004, when we had an individual walk in and literally shoot a security guard right here at the Capitol. So we're naming the bill after him, William Wozniak, because it's very important that, number one, that we remember that he gave his life in defense of this particular Capitol, but also the fact that it's been 20 years and we really don't have beefed up security since that happened. Our security need to feel safe. We want to give them the opportunity to have additional training. It's volunteer. We're not going to force it on anybody, but if they would like to take state police training, firearms training, we want them to have that ability so that they feel safe doing their jobs. It's about everyone in this building, not just one group, but everybody needs to feel safe, starting with our first line security defenses. So we want that. We're asking for cameras outside of the Capitol, license plate readers, not facial recognition, because I know people go crazy with that, but license plate readers. We know from the state police and the news press releases that they've done that these license plate readers have been very successful in helping to apprehend suspects. So when we get these bomb threats, when we get these active shooters, we will be able to identify within a reasonable radius, where this may have come from and who that individual was. So I think that is important. We're looking for a better scanning system, a better way of identifying who's actually in the building. We all receive a badge with our pictures on it, and we walk by and we flash it, past security. But how hard is it for us to take a minute and have to actually scan? Is this badge active? Let's start with that, because if I'm no longer a representative, I still have my badge. They don't ask us to give them back, but maybe that person shouldn't be in the building. Or maybe there's a lobbyist who did something unethical, who should not be in the building, but yet they still have their identification. When you go to the health club, what's the first thing you do? They don't just let you walk in. You have to stop. You have to scan. Are you active, inactive? Do you even belong in this building? I don't think, 1 minute of inconvenience is worth the safety of all. So I know there's some individuals who in the past may have pushed back, but after this last alarm, I don't think anybody would push back to actually having to scan, and say, I am authorized to be in this building. We make all of our visitors walk through scanners.
So you're introducing this bill. There's only now a week left of scheduled session. Always could go to the end of May, but ticking clock on this session. How important is it that it gets done in the spring here? Well, and do you believe that you have the support to push this to the finish line?
I believe if this bill hit the floor today, it would definitely pass out of committee and it would fly out of the House. This is a bipartisan issue. A lot of individuals do not feel safe. This is a safety issue. And I want to be very clear that this is not on our current Secretary of State, Leader Alexei Giannoulias. He is doing a fantastic job. I really want to put that out there. This is a 20-year issue. 2004 to 2024, we have not done anything to beef up our security here at the Capitol. So he's walking into this, and the bill is currently under review because I know his office is looking at what can they reasonably do, what do they have funds to do, is there appropriation going to be needed, how can we make this bill, this facility as safe as possible. So I know that his office is doing that currently.
So I wonder with this, because this bill was introduced earlier this past week, and it's in the House Executive Committee now. It didn't get called for a vote in the Executive Committee. The Secretary of State's office is still reviewing it. What if this would fly through, like you said it would, with the support it has? Why hasn't it been called yet? What's the conversation that's slowing this up right now?
Unfortunately,
is it finances? Is it money, or is it?
It always comes down to money, because these things are not cheap. The cameras, there's a cost associated with that. A new scanning system, there's a cost associated with that. The safety boxes that we're asking for, the call boxes that were asked to be distributed throughout all three complexes. All of those things come with a cost. And these are things that are not in the Secretary of State's current budget because they weren't aware that we were going to file a bill, obviously. So that's why when we say it's under review, it's under discussion, it doesn't mean that they don't want to do it. They're just looking at what is the best way to do it, and does it need to be done incrementally? What can we put in place now versus what would have to be like a year from now? So that's why we say it's under review. because I know there are conversations throughout this Capitol on how to make things more safe. I know our security guards would definitely like to have those hardened security points so that there's more than just a table between them and the public. Because right now, if you come through here with a gun, you can take out the entire security team. There's nothing there to protect them.
So the other question I had about this is that we're about to see in a couple years, maybe less, the finished product of the North Wing here. And that's going to include this big underground visitors entrance and everything. And I wonder how you see this kind of playing with that as we see a much more streamlined entry process for the Capitol. Is this double dipping in a way, I guess, or are you concerned that the same lax security that's already in place would end up being in the new edition as well?
I believe the timing of this bill is very much needed, considering that we are doing all this construction, considering that the Office of the Architect, and that's actually in the bill, asking them to work with the Secretary of State's office. We know that there's a lot of improvements that are being made. How hard would it be while everything is torn apart and under construction to add these extra safety checkpoints? You know, this is probably the best time to do it while everything is under construction. You know, what can we do to help you to put these plate readers in, to put in call boxes, to put in any type of an extra safety step to provide security to everybody in the building. So I think the bill is very needed at this time. I believe that there is an opportunity here, you know, to make sure that with this construction prior to it being completed, that we're adding these safety features. Because as I stated, during the lockdown, there were individuals walking all through the tunnels. So there was no security down there. So if we can install at least some cameras in these tunnels, so if there is somebody who is being a bad character or a bad actor and they're running through these tunnels, if they're planting bombs, we at least will be able to see them. We'll be able to detect where these things are happening at and shut off that particular section. I think now more than ever we need this. We saw what happened at our Capitol. It was atrocious. You know, we will not allow ourselves to succumb to domestic terrorism. We have to step up and do our share. We know the state police have stepped up and said, hey, we will be happy to take over the state capitol. You know, our guys are trained to deal with terrorists. Our guys are trained to deal with these type of situations. And if anybody comes in here, we will be able to address it. You know, the Secretary of State is separate from state police, but we're offering the Secretary of State that opportunity to train their staff the same way our state police are trained. It's voluntary, but we want to give them that opportunity to have all the training that they feel that is necessary for them to effectively do their jobs.
All right, well, Representative Rita Mayfield, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you so much for having me, yes.
We'll be right back.
Yes.